Claire Trevor won an Oscar in 1949. She smiled on stage and thanked everyone. But what the audience didn't know was that days before, she had been beaten on set so badly she needed stitches. And that was just the beginning. By 1960, she pawned that same Oscar for $15,000 just to survive. Her friends never knew she was broke. Her family never knew she was drinking between takes. And in 1978, when tragedy struck, she made a decision so painful that even her therapist couldn't help her forgive herself. Today, someone who knew her is finally breaking the silence. Claire Trevor came into the world on March 8, 1910, in a working-class part of Brooklyn called Bensonhurst. Her real name was Claire Wemlinger. Her father, Noel, was from Paris and worked as a tailor on Fifth Avenue. Her mother, Betty, was from Belfast, Ireland, and worked as a dressmaker. They weren't rich, and things got harder when Noel's business failed during the Great Depression. By 1915, when Claire was around 5, the family was still scraping by in Brooklyn. But in 1923, something changed. They moved to Larchmont in Westchester County. It was a much wealthier place, filled with people who had far more than they did. Claire felt the difference in every way. The houses were bigger, the clothes were nicer, the girls at school acted like princesses. But even surrounded by wealth, Claire was still the girl with immigrant parents, still walking around with second-hand clothes, still remembering nights when the family barely had heat. That made her watch people closely. She started to imitate them, learning how the rich spoke, how they carried themselves. She could read people fast. At just 11 years old, she began acting in school plays, and it was clear she had something. Her voice, her face, the way she used silence, it all grabbed attention. Her mother's Irish fire and her father's Parisian pride ran through her. Being the outsider in Larchmont made her sharper. She was always looking in from the edge, learning how people worked, how they talked, how they hid pain. That would later become her greatest strength. In 1928, when Claire was 18 and a senior at Mamaroneck High School, she entered a speaking contest. It didn't seem like much, just a local competition. But when she won, something clicked. The prize was $15, which was a lot for a family barely scraping by. Today, that would be over $200. It wasn't just the money. It was the validation. For the first time, Claire felt like someone was saying, "Yes, you belong here." Her parents saw it too. That win convinced them it wasn't a silly dream. Acting could be real. That small victory was the first time she stepped forward without apology. It was the moment that made her believe she had a voice worth hearing. It came at a time when her father's business was failing again. So every bit of hope mattered. The win didn't just buy a few meals, it changed her future. It sent her straight to Columbia University. But she didn't stay long. She wanted to act, not study textbooks. After 6 months at Columbia, Claire dropped out and enrolled in the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. She was 19. Her parents were nervous, money was tight, but she was determined. This was the late 1920s, when silent films were fading and sound was taking over. Claire threw herself into voice training, scene study, and character work. She learned how to control her voice, how to use silence, how to make a single glance hit hard. In summer 1929, she landed her first stage role with Robert Henderson's repertory company in Michigan. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the beginning. She was now officially a working actress. She had started the path that would shape her life. From 1929 to 1932, she worked constantly. Small theater gigs, summer stock, short films for Vitagraph Studios in Brooklyn. Vitagraph was turning out hundreds of short films during the early sound era, and Claire was in the middle of it. The pay was low, and nobody remembered the actors' names, but it gave her camera experience. She was living at home, commuting to the studio, saving every dollar. In 1931, she joined the Hampton Players in Long Island for summer stock theater. One role after another, she learned to be fast, flexible, and fearless. She wasn't just playing characters, she was becoming them. All of that hard work led to her Broadway debut in 1932 in Whistling in the Dark. That role came exactly 4 years after her high school speech contest. 4 years of non-stop grinding. But now, she had made it to Broadway. Back in September 1927, when she was just 17, she'd arrived in New York with only $50. Tuition at the American Academy cost $300 a year, so she worked brutal 12-hour waitress shifts at Tony's in Greenwich Village. One night, she served a man wearing sunglasses and a fake mustache. It was Charlie Chaplin, hiding from fans. Claire didn't hesitate. She asked him for advice. He looked up from his plate and told her, "Timing is everything." She remembered that line the next day in acting class. She performed a monologue about a grieving widow, and something changed. Her professor was stunned. He even waived her next month's tuition. 2 years later, on October 28, 1929, the day before the stock market crash, Claire got her first professional stage job as a chorus girl in The Great Lover. The timing was cruel. While people outside were losing their life savings, Claire was cracking jokes on stage. She couldn't help it. She started ad-libbing lines about the market crash. Jokes like, "At least my heart's not crashing like the Dow." The theater owner, who had lost $50,000 in the crash, was furious. He fired her after 2 weeks. She earned just 18 cents and ended up blacklisted from several theaters. But she learned something vital: how to turn disaster into power. That quick tongue and raw honesty would become her secret weapon in Hollywood. In summer 1930, Claire joined the Mohawk Valley Players, a small theater group touring upstate New York. It was supposed to be a quiet job, but it turned into an acting marathon. She played 15 different roles in 12 weeks. One of the most unforgettable was a cigar-smoking bootlegger's girlfriend in a play called Hooch and Heartbreak. She had never smoked before, but she practiced until she could puff Cuban cigars on stage without coughing. A local paper said she looked like she actually knew real gangsters. She made only $12 a week plus food, but she walked away with 200 pages of memorized dialogue and 15 character voices she'd never forget. Then came a painful moment. In March 1931, she auditioned for the Ziegfeld Follies. After waiting 4 hours, she sang her heart out. The legendary producer Florence Ziegfeld looked at her and said she was too plain and forgettable. It crushed her. But instead of giving up, she changed everything. She spent her last $15 to dye her hair platinum blonde and bought a tight black dress from a pawn shop. The next night, she walked into a speakeasy on West 48th Street and asked for a singing job. The owner took one look and said yes. For $8 a night, she sang torch songs in a smoky club until 3 a.m. She dodged drunk hecklers and police raids. She learned to stay calm under pressure, to sing even when her voice trembled. That smoky, husky tone she became known for? It started right there. By 1932, she was broke but not broken. She auditioned for a radio serial called The Road of Life. She got the part of Mary Sullivan, a factory worker. In episode 47, when Mary found out her husband had lost his job, Claire's performance made listeners cry. The station got over 300 letters in 1 week. The sponsor, Ovaltine, paid her extra to voice their ads. One day in November, Warner Brothers talent scout Ben Kalmanson was stuck in traffic, listening to episode 52. He heard Claire's voice and pulled over to write down the station number. Within 24 hours, he found her and offered her a screen test. That $18 radio role became her golden ticket. In May 1933, Claire Trevor signed with Fox Studios at age 23. She arrived in Hollywood on May 7th with her parents in tow. Her first film was Life in the Raw, a Western with George O'Brien. It flopped. Critics called her a Jean Harlow copy, which stung. But she got another shot with The Mad Game, also in 1933, opposite Spencer Tracy. She played a sharp newspaper reporter. That role earned her real fan mail and critical praise. Variety called her performance the best portrayal of a female reporter Hollywood had seen. But Fox didn't treat her like a star. They started loaning her out to other studios just to make quick cash. By 1934, she was stuck in a pattern. Over and over, she got cast as the tough blonde, the bad girl, the hard-boiled dame. Even though she had a refined background and serious acting training, Hollywood didn't care. They just saw the smoky voice and the sharp jawline. She hated the typecasting. She once said her voice cracked with a cry when the emotions got too strong. That rawness made her stand out. From 1933 to 1938, she did 29 films, most of them low-budget B-movies that didn't let her show what she could really do. In 1935, she was cast in Dante's Inferno. There was a fire scene with real flames, and she got dangerously close to them during shooting. It wasn't special effects. It was real fire. That scared her. She started demanding safer conditions. For the first time, she pushed back and renegotiated her contract. Between 1933 and 1935, Claire Trevor had become one of the busiest women in Hollywood. In Jimmy and Sally, she took over a part written for another actress and made it her own. She wasn't yet a superstar, but she was unstoppable. The studios saw her as dependable, fast, and tough. When Claire Trevor joined Warner Brothers in 1936, she wasn't given the spotlight. She wasn't the lead in Stella Dallas. She played a smaller role, someone chasing status. But what happened next made people look twice. She got nominated for an Oscar in 1938, not for Stella Dallas, but for Dead End. That confused everyone. Studios quickly saw her power in emotional family dramas. They offered her $2,000 a week, which would be about $37,000 today. But Claire said no. She didn't want to be locked into playing mothers. In 1937, very few actors, especially women, had the courage to say no to powerful studios. But she did, and that no changed everything. In Dead End, filmed in 1937, she played Francie, a woman dying from syphilis. The makeup wasn't fake. William Wyler, the director, gave her worn-out heels, a dirty bag, and said she couldn't fix her hair or wear makeup. They built a $75,000 replica of the East River slums instead of filming in real locations. Her death scene was so raw that Humphrey Bogart was shaken. Claire earned another Oscar nomination, standing beside stars like Mae Whitty. Bogart later said, watching her changed the way he acted. But behind the scenes, things weren't calm. Claire didn't like her dialogue. She thought her lines made her look cheap. One day, she marched up to Wyler and asked to rewrite everything. That had never been done, especially not by a woman. Wyler got furious and threatened to fire her. But producer Samuel Goldwyn noticed her rewritten version during rehearsals and changed his mind. Turns out, Claire had been working secretly with Lillian Hellman, the screenwriter. That caused problems. Hunts Hall accused her of trying to steal the spotlight. Even so, critics loved her new depth. Variety wrote she had surprising emotional sophistication. The fight with Wyler never really ended, but it gave her the respect of the press and the audience. Then came The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse in 1938. Claire played a criminal named Joe Keller. To prepare, she hired a real pickpocket named Fingers Murphy for $50 a week. That's nearly $900 today. She practiced by secretly stealing wallets and watches from Warner Brothers staff during lunch breaks. She'd return them with notes signed by her character. At first, Bogart thought it was funny, but she kept stealing his things, his lucky coin, his glasses. He got annoyed and hid her scripts and costume jewelry. The prank war delayed filming by 3 days until the director had to step in. The training worked so well, she even stole a reporter's notebook by accident. That story spread through the studio like wildfire. In 1939, she starred in Allegheny Uprising and did her own stunts. On October 15th, her horse stumbled. She slammed into a wooden fence and broke her wrist in 2 places. She didn't stop. She got back on the horse and finished the scene, even though her wrist was swelling. She refused painkillers because she said she needed her mind clear. Later that day, X-rays showed she had been acting for 6 hours with compound fractures. The studio was furious, but the footage was perfect, so they used it in the final film. That moment became part of Hollywood history. Also in 1939, she played Dallas in Stagecoach. There was a scene where a woman insulted her. Claire slapped her. That slap wasn't in the script. She improvised it because she had seen extras being treated badly on set. John Ford kept the scene. That moment built a bond between her and John Wayne. He later said she had more guts than most men in this town. The film made $1.1 million from a $392,000 budget and made her a star. That role became the blueprint for Western heroines. By 1944, during Murder, My Sweet, Claire did voice work for just $500 over 3 days. But when she found out the studio planned to leave her name out of the credits, she fought back. On February 15th, she told RKO to pay her $5,000 or she'd sue for professional damage. They agreed within 48 hours. She got her credit and the money. That changed how actresses handled uncredited work. She used that momentum to raise her rate from $15,000 to $35,000 per film by 1945. Then, in 1947 came Born to Kill. Claire was hiding something. Every day she was drinking, hiding flasks in her dressing room, sometimes taking 6 shots of whiskey just to steady herself. The crew noticed her hands shaking, so they moved filming to early mornings when she was most stable. Her co-star Lawrence Tierney was also battling alcoholism, and they drank together between scenes. The budget was supposed to be $450,000, but doubled because of delays. Yet critics loved her. One line stuck: "I'm poison ivy in a wedding ring." That role felt too real because she was falling apart inside. A year later, in 1948, she filmed Key Largo. Her role as Gay Dawn required her to be beaten on screen. On June 23rd, during a late-night shoot, a prop slap from Edward G. Robinson went wrong. His ring hit her cheekbone and left a real bruise that needed 3 stitches. But they kept filming. The take was perfect. That performance won her the Oscar. She made $50,000 from that film, the most she'd ever earned. The movie made $3.2 million. When she got on stage to accept the award on March 24, 1949, she spoke for just 23 seconds and cried. That moment became one of the most emotional in Oscar history. Later that year, in Raw Deal, she used real pain to act. Her husband, Clark Andrews, had cheated on her with her best friend. That betrayal burned deep. In one scene, she lights matches while talking about revenge. She improvised everything. That take lasted 4 minutes, but they trimmed it to 90 seconds. Her tears weren't acting. They were real. The movie cost $750,000 and made $1.8 million. Everyone said her performance felt terrifyingly real. In November 1948, she married Milton Brenn in Mexico. Her divorce had just been finalized 3 months earlier. She let him adopt her son Charles, even renaming him. She cut down on movies, saying no to offers that could have earned her $200,000 a year. She wanted to focus on her new family. They lived in Beverly Hills, and she raised not just Charles but Milton's two sons, too. By the early 1950s, she testified during the McCarthy hearings. She stayed vague on purpose to avoid getting blacklisted. Around the same time, she acted in a TV episode about a woman finding out her dead husband was a Nazi. That role terrified her. She said it felt like acting out her worst fear. She lost 15 pounds from stress and started getting anxiety attacks. She kept quiet while others, like Marcia Hunt, were blacklisted. Her silence saved her career, but the fear never went away. She couldn't sleep for years. In 1949, she turned down I Married a Communist, which would have paid her $100,000, almost $1.2 million today. 13 directors had already refused the script. She said, "I'd rather starve than sell my soul to this McCarthyite garbage." She was blacklisted from 3 major films and lost $300,000 in offers. But she kept her integrity. In 1954, she reunited with John Wayne for The High and the Mighty. He was secretly battling stomach cancer. Claire kept his secret, fed him special meals, and covered for him on set. He was so grateful, he gave her $10,000 from his own pocket and promised her more roles. The film got her another Oscar nomination. Wayne later moved 2 minutes away from her home. They became neighbors and sailing buddies. He called her "my guardian angel." She called him Superman. By 1960, Milton's real estate empire collapsed. Claire had to sell her jewelry, including a $75,000 diamond necklace from Howard Hughes and $50,000 emerald earrings. She even pawned her Oscar for $15,000. They almost lost their house. Friends never knew. She still hosted dinner parties while secretly cutting costs. That experience haunted her and later pushed her into charity work. She never forgot what it felt like to almost lose everything. In 1962, while filming 2 weeks in another town, she broke down. Her character was bitter, and the lines hit too close. Her son Charles had just been arrested twice. He was drinking heavily. During one scene, she cried uncontrollably for over an hour, and admitted to the director she was scared of becoming irrelevant. She was 52 and felt Hollywood was moving on without her. Then, in 1978, the worst happened. On September 25th, Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 182 crashed. Her 35-year-old son, Charles, was on board. Everyone died. Claire had to go to the morgue to identify him. The only way she recognized him was by a silver watch engraved with CCB. That moment destroyed her. She went into hiding for 6 months and didn't talk to anyone. That Christmas, she found boxes of Charles's scripts and stories. He had wanted to be a writer like his stepfather. She burned all of it. Every page. 127 pages turned to ash in her fireplace. She later called it her biggest regret. In therapy, she said she dreamed of trying to pull the pages out of the fire. Between 1979 and 1981, she spent over $50,000 on therapy just to live with that guilt. And then came more heartbreak. In August 1979, Milton was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He lost the ability to read, so Claire read him their old scripts for hours every day. She read Key Largo out loud, hoping it would make him smile. She also started accepting every TV cameo just to keep herself busy. The Love Boat, Heart to Heart, Murder, she wrote. She was working non-stop, trying not to think about losing her son and her husband. Milton died on December 14, 1979. Claire said afterward, "I felt completely alone." Claire Trevor was 77 years old when she made a powerful comeback on television. On October 4, 1987, she appeared in an episode of Murder she wrote, called Witness for the Defense. The setting was a Canadian courtroom, and she acted alongside Patrick McGoohan and Juliette Mills. Claire played a key witness, and even though it was just a guest role, she brought the same sharp energy she had shown in old film noirs. Her performance stood out so much that critics called it one of the best episodes in the entire series. What made it even more special was that this would be one of the last times she acted on TV. Just a few months later, she quietly retired, closing the door on a long and legendary career. It reminded everyone that she had once won an Oscar for Key Largo nearly 40 years earlier, back in 1948. But she wasn't quite finished yet. Her final screen role came later that same year in a TV movie called Breaking Home Ties, which aired on November 27, 1987. She again played a strong, thoughtful woman, this time a teacher named Grace Porter, who returned to her small hometown after her husband died. She acted alongside Jason Robards and Eva Marie Sant. One of her most powerful scenes came when her character told the story of a secret romance she had many years ago with a student, and how she ended it to protect her reputation. There was nothing loud or dramatic about her acting. She spoke with calm and emotion, and the scene landed hard. Reviewers said she still had the skills, even at 77. That performance became her official goodbye after 54 years in film and TV. There were rumors she acted in a stage play called The Visit in 1982, but no real records exist. By that time, she had already pulled back from theater. Her life had taken a painful turn after her son Charles died in the PSA Flight 182 crash in 1978. Just a year later in 1979, her husband Milton died from a brain tumor. Losing them both crushed her. She moved into an apartment on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan and stayed out of the public eye for a while. So it's unlikely she was doing theater in 1982, especially at age 72. Some people confused her with a miniseries called The Cape from 1996, but she was never in that. What they were probably thinking of was The Cape Town Affair, a spy movie she filmed back in 1967. It was shot in South Africa, and it co-starred James Brolin and Jacqueline Bisset. At the time, she was 57. The filming was tough, and after that she stepped away from movies for a long time. She came back in 1982 for a small role in Kiss Me Goodbye with Sally Field. But The Cape Town Affair was her last theatrical film before that break. She finally decided to retire in 1987 after breaking home ties. It wasn't because of scandal or drama. It was just time. The losses of her son and husband had worn her down. She only took a few roles in the 1980s, like The Love Boat and Murder, she wrote, and then called it a day. After that, she moved to Newport Beach and focused on something else entirely: supporting young artists. In 1991, she gave $1 million to UC Irvine's drama program. That gift was just the beginning. After her death in April 2000, her stepson Donald Bren and his brother Peter donated another $5 million in her honor. Then in 2003, Donald gave an additional $2.5 million. Together, the total became $10 million. This money created 3 permanent teaching positions and a support fund for the arts school. In November 2000, the university officially named it the Claire Trevor School of the Arts. She had wanted young people to dream bigger and believe in imagination, and now that dream would live on. In a 1995 interview when she was 85, she made a surprising confession. She had once turned down the role in Casablanca. She said it wasn't because of career reasons, but because she put her family first. She wasn't like Betty Davis or Joan Crawford, who were driven mainly by ambition. Claire chose differently. That same year, Turner Classic Movies began airing tributes to her work. Her old films, Dead End, Stagecoach, Key Largo, were shown again, and a new generation of fans saw her talent with fresh eyes. Critics started calling her the Queen of Film Noir. During the 1990s, she spent more and more time at UC Irvine. She didn't just write checks, she actually taught. She ran master classes where she told stories about working with big stars like Humphrey Bogart. She even did his voice and mannerisms, shocking students who had never seen someone mimic Bogart so perfectly. She told them how their on-set arguments actually made her performances better. She said her Oscar speech in 1948 was inspired by those clashes. She had thanked the fighters who make it real. She sat in on rehearsals, gave detailed notes on student performances, and made sure they knew exactly how much effort good acting really took. In early 2000, just before her death, she gave one last interview. She was 90 years old. What no one knew at the time was that she was quietly battling emphysema. Even though her health was fading, she spoke with focus and strength. She talked about the scholarship program she had built to help actors from poor families. She believed imagination was the key to a full life and that the arts helped bring people together. That belief never changed. She passed away on April 8, 2000, in Newport Beach. But even after she was gone, her legacy kept growing. Her personal letters were found, including ones praising John Wayne for his cancer awareness work. She had admired him deeply, especially for how he faced illness head-on. Younger stars like Jessica Chastain later said they studied Claire's letters and performances to prepare for noir roles of their own. Scholars also began studying her work more closely, using her old notes and letters to better understand how stars in Hollywood's golden age worked together, supported each other, and chose their roles carefully.